Hey guys. Let's get started. So, first off, for those, I want to welcome everybody. This is the District 2 Town Hall meeting. If you're not, that surprises you, then there's the door, and thank you very much for coming. Hopefully you'll have a right. There's about a dozen people also on Zoom, so that's great. I appreciate the turnout. I think you all know me, but I'll introduce myself. I'm Mark Grill. I'm the Commissioner for District 2. This is our second, I believe, town hall meeting that we've had, and this is an initiative that Alex Ray, who's our city manager sitting next to me, has put together with his team to help us as residents have better interaction with the city and what's going on, and have closer interaction. We've put an agenda together today. It's a pretty full agenda, but city staff will take us through different things. Hopefully we'll get through everything in some detail. This is meant to be an interactive session, so it doesn't turn into a lecture. And we can spend as much time or as little time on each subject as you want. We've got Alex who will introduce his staff. We have a number of members from the city team here. So with that, Alex.
Thank you, Mark, and I want to recognize, I think, the mayor is back there, Johnson is back there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From city staff, we have Sara Puente, who's managing our social media, our city clerk, Amber. We got our fire chief. We have our library director, our community development director. Our chief of operations, our CFO, city manager over there, Mike Clark. So you really got almost anybody who can really help you answer any questions that you have today. As Mark indicated, we do have a very full agenda, but doesn't mean that when we get to item 12, general questions and answers, we'll have time hopefully to be able to address any of the concerns that we haven't hit here directly today. With regards to the Gulf Winds Drive project, Mike is going to discuss in here the generalities of the project in terms of kind of where we are, what the timetable is, things that we're still kind of doing through the project. But we also have outside the maps, and we have staff outside. If you want to see specifically what's happening in front of your house, specifically in your street, if you want to go and see that. We do have people that are going to be managing that. We didn't bring those maps in here because we wouldn't really have time to address everything else to start doing that at this meeting. So, with that, the first person that I'm going to be coming on to speak to you is Mike Clark, our Public Works Director, and he's going to take a good half of the agenda. So, with that. I believe I told you that. Oh, no, I didn't expect it. I knew exactly what you were looking for. I found it away now. I think yeah.
Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today on the application. Alex, I'll try and explain a couple of engineering things going on in the world. As Alex said, the 100% drawings, courtesy of the guy that just walked in the door. You did a fantastic job printing them for me today for you around the table.
And we're welcoming Commissioner Chris Gross, who is working like Frankenstein, but it's here. So,
so if you want to look at it, Nicole is back there. She's our engineer and the ops manager. And the maps are arranged. The beginning of the project is on that table that goes around the circle. So the end of the project is on the other set of tables. So go around, find your property, ask questions. We are, as I said, at 100%, and we're looking to move into procurement soon. And we're trying to get it going so that I think Alex, we were looking for a spring. Spring start for both projects, probably simultaneously.
Both on project meeting, Gulf Winds and
the sister project.
Yeah,
right. So the high level idea behind both of these projects, other than the fact that they was to improve neighborhood safety by slowing down speeds of vehicles and providing for safe transportation alternatives for pedestrians and bicyclists. We achieve both of those high-level objectives. So I'm there are 4 speed tables in the intersections. You can see what they look like. So those would be significant. You can't blow through the stop sign anymore unless you're willing to upend everything in the trunk of your car, find your grandson or your daughter shifting seats in the back. So we'll just go ahead and have those all ready for you to answer any questions.
So Mike, if I may on that, and we discussed with the residents, and I received a lot of questions. The last meeting we had in July, we were at 60%. So now you say we're at 100%. Can you tell us what changes have gone through? Because I think at that meeting in July, we had a lot of feedback and questions and comments, and we joked, oh, we started at 60, but we're finishing this meeting at 30%. So what has changed from that period to now? Because I don't think anyone here is familiar with where we are.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. 30% design is where the artistry is still in play. The engineers are listening and responding to the ideas that how to make this work better. At 60%, the design drawings are almost generally complete. We don't expect to touch them very much anymore. And so in that last meeting, we proposed that there would be a roundabout at 64.
64, right?
And that was next. Right? We said, no, we don't want to do that. We wanted to put the stop signs and the speed tables in the intersections. So they were added in. And other than those 2 items,
You make sidewalks a little narrower, to make it 8. That would be
in
more
one block face, I think we had to give up a little bit sidewalk. And that was on the far southern portion of the project. I believe. Parking was retained almost to the exact same numbers that we have now. Cigar condos. And other than that, really very little change. Nothing was significant. The engineers cleaned up a few lines that you and I would never even see, but were particular about our projects. And so we moved dash lines to solid lines and stuff.
Can you refresh my memory why we're getting rid of 5-foot existing sidewalks and putting down 6-foot, adding more impervious?
Did you miss the part about where I
I
said
missed
we were
everything.
trying?
I missed it.
So the high level objective was to improve neighborhood safety by slowing down traffic and improving the mobility for bicyclists and pedestrians by the sidewalk.
Well, bicycles aren't on the sidewalks.
So they can't
Right,
be,
right.
they
You're
can't be.
putting
So
like-
that is,
Right.
that is the answer, okay? So if you have any other questions about the project that are particular to your property, I'd be happy to answer them.
Now, before we get into questions, one thing that happened recently is that we've been notified by Duke Energy that they do want to improve the hardening / undergrounding maybe on the corridor. So they're looking at our plans, and if they can get that project going at the same time, then we'll try to accommodate that way you only get 1 disruption, not 2, because so unfortunately it would have been great if it would have told us a year ago, but at least it's better than before break around. So
Yeah, I apologize.
Yeah.
So are they got underground?
and we don't know exactly if they're going underground or hardened, either one. They do have 2 separate programs. They have been tasked by the Public Regulatory Commission to look at all of the areas where there are routine disruption on the power grid, and then they are reassessing all of those areas and figuring out which one is more practical for them to do, whether it's hardening or underground. The city has communicated to them that we would like underground as much as possible. And if there is a financial contribution to the city or something that we can do for them to facilitate on the ground, that we would like to see on the ground. Because we're going to be taking out the road, it really will not be difficult for us to lay the cable, the conduit for them to on the ground that later on. But those discussions are still happening. So to try to let you know that that was happening, we don't know exactly what they're going to do and what the final agreements will be with them, but we're looking at that. Okay, and now we can.
On the sidewalks, are we at 6, 8, or 10-foot sidewalks?
Yes, where space allows. There are a variety of widths depending on the topography of the.
Because,
specific
and I don't
properties.
want to put words in anyone's mouth who's here, but discussions that I've had with many residents is why don't we increase the pervious space, put in more greenery, leave the sidewalks at 5 feet as opposed to putting in 8 to 10-foot slabs of concrete that make it impervious.
So the amount of impervious drainable landscaping area is actually increased because the width of the road has been so dramatically reduced. We're going to 10-foot 5 lanes instead of 12 to 15-foot lanes. And so the landscaping has been retained.
I agree.
And increased virtually on every single block face along the entire project itself.
That's not true on my block.
Not every block face, as you know, there are existing conditions where we just can't engineer those kinds of things. But as I said in the beginning, the objective was to get the traffic calming by narrower streets and the sidewalks for the pedestrian and bicyclist safety and separate those two entities where we can. And the topography, to your point, Commissioner, does limit us in certain areas. So by your place, that 6-foot sidewalk, that 5-foot sidewalk, we can't do anything with it. There's no land available to us. And so in other spaces, there was.
Well, there's also the storm drainage issue.
The entire storm drain system was redesigned to function better. The inlets in most cases are still relatively close to where they are now. In other cases, they moved a little bit. And you will find that there is going to be some undulation in the road. So as you're driving along, you're going to feel like you're coming up and then going back down. That is to create artificial slopes so the rainwater actually flows to the inlets instead of just sitting there on a flat surface.
Mike, I'm sorry. Can you come closer to the,
Oh,
so they
you
can hear
have to
you?
look at that. Doing that camera, that's a camera.
They can't hear you over there. If you can come closer, if you can
Oh,
stand a little bit
change sides?
closer,
Sure.
that would be great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Now you gotta start over.
Hey, we got a lot. Okay, folks. Got a lot to
This is a
cover.
big one, this is a big one. Thank you for your efforts on this project. It's a hard thing to do. I attended the July meeting remotely, so I heard some of the concerns there. The main hat I'm wearing is residents of e-bike rider. So as we know, the city commission has ruled that the e-bikes cannot be ever put on a sidewalk. At least that's what they like to want to be. It was what the law is. So as an e-bike rider, I'm forced to either ride on, everybody is forced to either ride on Gulf Boulevard, which is not the safest place to be, or what I enjoy, and a lot of people enjoy, is to use Gulf Winds for their bikes, because it avoids all the traffic. So I just rode just now from Annie's or Dunkin' Donuts to here. And I noticed in certain stretches, in the beginning, there's a 4-foot bike lane plus the culvert, the drainage culvert, which is not really supposed to count as part of it. And that's great. 4 foot is probably okay if you have them in both directions. But then by the time I got to the Sylvetta Apartments, that lane in this direction for bikes disappeared entirely.
Mhm.
So I was in with the traffic. And then near the end of that block, it came again. And then as I worked my way over here, there were spots where it disappeared again, or it came back. So is the result of this project that will have a safe, meaning at least 4 foot wide, bike lane in each direction. Remember, sidewalks don't help for the e-bike riders. So a 4 foot wide bike lane in both directions all the way, from let's say Dunkin' Donuts to the end of this project. Or how do we deal with the fact that there aren't, or couldn't we do that? Something about it.
I believe the engineer included share the bicycle, share with the bicycle signage on the roadway itself in the spaces where we can accommodate a separated bike lane on one side.
Okay.
And so as you come around at Sylvette, and you come into all those parallel parking spots, that lane should be marked with a Cheryl, and we can go out and check that. If like,
Okay, that's the only one you see is like,
there may be a couple of others. You know, I don't have all 37 sheets out there memorized to the point where I can give you the details that you're kind of asking me for. But I am more than happy to go out there and go through the conversation for as long as it takes to satisfy your question.
it's more that it's as a design goal, right, you know, rather than widening sidewalks.
Yeah.
Since we don't allow e-bikes on sidewalks, and that's a popular mode of transportation, making sure we have safe bike lanes, or I was hoping in this project, and we discussed it last meeting, people were talking about protected bike lanes, which would really be a bad, you know.
I would love to have had space to do protected bicycle lanes, absolutely, but we didn't have it. So we're kind of, this design, there's a lot of compromises in here to reach the spot where we accommodated as much as we possibly could for the goals that we set and for the topography that we were challenged with. And so there's lots and lots of nuances in there. If you'd like to cherry pick a piece out and talk to me about it, or go over a long share road concept, I'd be happy to do
Or
that.
share on, let people get onto the sidewalk.
I know the sister project, Ciega, the same question came up, and the answer was the same. The share road lanes are being marked where we can't accommodate bicycle separation. Yeah, okay.
I have a question. How fast are those go? How fast are you?
When I'm pedaling, like on a
Well,
sidewalk,
how fast are you cruising down the street?
probably about 10 miles an hour.
Because the ones I've seen are going a lot faster.
Sure, people can speed in any vehicle.
So, and so I guess I'll try to end with this thought. God gave us free will. And a lot of people exercise it in ways that make you wonder what the heck is going on between their ears. I cannot accommodate that. So we do the best that we can. The next item up is road repair status. Everybody loves potholes. We currently have 15 on the list. The oldest one has been up for 84 days. The freshest one was just happening this week. And so we have this process. We don't know where the water is going to blow up and where the pipe is going to break. But when it does, Pinellas County crews come out and fix it. They're big enough to run 24/7, 365. There's no way that the city can do it. There's no way we can hire a contractor to do that without paying a considerable premium. Once the water is stopped flowing, we get the work order and say, hey, you know, okay, we got a problem here, go fix it. So we do two things. If Hollywood is not calling me. If it's the first break, we're just going to patch that break and let it go. And if it's the second break, we're going to dig up the entire pipe from the right-of-way line to the main, replace that section of pipe, and then patch it. So there's two contractors involved, a plumbing contractor and a roadway patching contractor. We synchronize those guys.
So when you see a small cut in the road, that means that it's the first break and it's only being repaired by the county. When you see the break from the center of the road all the way through, it means that it broke a second time, and that means that means that we're getting a second plumber to go and replace the entirety of the line. So there are two policies that we implemented on reclaimed water. That is one, that on the second break, we replace the entire line. And the other one is whenever we're doing any resurfacing of an entire road segment, then we'll look at every line that has not been replaced. And then we'll do all of those. So when we're doing, I think on 64th Avenue, we did it right. You'll see, cut after cut after cut after cut, and then we'll basically are preparing that road for the repairs. In the system that we have, so those two repairs, whether it's the first one or the second one, they will happen within a 30-day period. Then within the next 30-day window is when we schedule the asphalt to come in and do the work. We're typically are doing about 15 per month, with the asphalt work, and that will happen during the second month. So our goal is to average between 30 and 60 days in the process. The first 30 days are to repair, the first or second repair. The second 30 days is when we come in. I believe that the asphalt company is coming this week or next week.
I believe we're trying to schedule them for this week, but it's like next week looks more.
Right,
solid.
and then we'll do those 15 that are behind. Once in a while, we get something that is unusual, that it falls into the 80-something days.
Mhm.
And when we started kind of narrowing this process, we were having things that were going 4 and 5 months from break. So we're getting closer to getting this, narrowed down during the holidays. It was difficult because most contractors stopped working around December 20th. So we kind of like fell a little bit behind there, but I think we're picking up a good rhythm and a good process to get this.
Yeah, I feel good about the rhythm moving forward. And so the reason why we don't do every patch right away is these construction crews are $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 just to show up. And then $5,000 a day to hang around while they do one patch. So it's not economical. Our resources, your tax dollars won't go. It just doesn't make sense, fiscal sense for it. So we bundle them and move them through. And we ask for everybody's patience as we guide around all those things.
So Mike, let me, I'll ask the question that someone in the audience maybe doesn't want to ask. We've got 2 curb-to-curb cuts on 64th, and I facetiously called them inverted speed bumps last night in the meeting. We've got another one on 55th, curb to curb. When can residents expect those to be? I mean, they are slowing the traffic down, but they won't last another 30. No way they're going to last 30 days, let alone 10.
So every open patch that's out there now is on our contractor's list when he mobilizes this time.
And 15 get done in 3 or 4 days.
About 3 or 4 days, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Just want to set the expectation, because people
No,
are always
and-
asking,
and-
when will it happen?
Why not put on the website, in your website schedule, so people know, because the worst thing is people don't know. People get very frustrated. Because and why not just make it open, transparent, and saying, everyone understands the rationale of why we need to wait, to your point, which I think is fair, but some of them do take longer, as noted, and the question is how much longer, and it's just a matter of knowing, just like when your plane's delayed, and they don't tell you why it's late, you will get really upset, versus it's late because of X, oh, got it, I can now move on with my life. So why not just go on your website and just like, here's the schedule, next.
Yeah. Sorry.
On my list. Got it.
I have a lot of ideas.
Yes.
So I just want to tell you how it is. You talk about the first time it breaks, the second time it breaks. We've had them break 5, 6, 7 times. They're back out there digging it up again. Why don't we end this problem and do it right and get it over with? Because the city hasn't done it right since 10 years after they put it in.
We only changed this policy about 6 or 8 months ago. Right.
But it was suggested 2 years ago.
But we now have changed the policy, so we're doing it right now. So I don't know. The point is that we didn't do it 10 years ago. Yeah, probably should have.
Didn't do it 2 years ago.
No,
When it was brought up, you ignore us. And the fact is, you're gonna be tearing up our roads for the next 5 years. It's ridiculous.
but it does cost money to go and completely change the line. Every time that we change one of the lines is $3,000 to $4,000 of maintenance work. So it's not that this is not an inexpensive process, and we have had to plan and program the funding to be able to do this. We now have the funding. We're doing it proactively, when we're doing road resurfacing. So we're doing that, and we're plan to spend over the next 2 years almost $1.5 million on improving the reclaimed water lines. So it's not that we have ignored this problem. This problem is an expensive problem that we're dealing with. And I think we have a good system. We have a good plan to move forward.
So one of the discussions that Alex and I have had is doing this proactively and doing this one time, I think, Mike, I think to your point. And it's frustrating for everybody on both sides of this room to have to come back time and time again to do it. So they've changed the process for the road resurfacing, which will come out, the plans are coming out, which is the normal annual program. And we had some in the district before the resurfacing work was done, mill it out, they changed every single lateral proactively. And then resurface the road.
And we're doing that in Gulf Point, we're doing that in Boca Sierra,
Right.
we're doing that.
Right.
Completely, right.
So,
64.
So where does that at? Because I haven't seen it.
What, I'm sorry.
Where you've done that and changed every lateral on the road. Every paved it. 'Cause I don't
Every
know where that
road,
is.
every road that we have resurfaced in the last 2 years cycle has had every single reclaimed water pipe underneath it fixed first.
so Mike, it's
I'm
been,
not talking about fix. I'm talking about replace.
Yeah,
so
replace,
it
I mean,
doesn't
replace.
break again.
I mean, replace.
we did, I believe it's 70 and 71st. There were some of the streets over here.
Yeah, there's some
East-west
smaller
streets.
streets,
Smaller
Bay
streets.
Street, Second Street,
We did we did Bay Street.
Bay Street.
So what's the schedule for 64?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, that's why I think it'd be good if we get the schedule out, because everyone will now internalize and say, what about my street? What about my street? No offense, I'm asking the same thing. My wife will ask, what about 64th? What about Second? So,
So, thank you for a wonderful segue to the next one. Maybe this will help everybody out a little bit. We have what's called the pavement condition index. I get really cool looking maps every couple of years. And there are vehicles with special sensors on them that's standardized across the United States. And as the vehicle rides the road, it assesses it and gives it a number between 0 and 100. So a 100 street was just paved, a 0, well, you're traveling on dirt. And we have been in the last 7 years since I've been here, we have been going from worst first up the line. So when I first got here, we were repaving streets that were in the 30s. And no, we were not doing reclaimed laterals because we hadn't really realized what was going on with those pipes until just 2 years ago. Now we're repaving streets that are in their 60s. And we're pushing very, very quickly to get the average pavement condition for all of our streets aggregate in the 70s next year. And I will tell you, you go visit your grandchildren or whatever in some other city, they're not where we are.
I can tell you that I've put thousands of miles on up and down from Florida to Georgia, inside, outside, up 75, in North Carolina and South Carolina. We have the worst frickin' roads here than anywhere that I've been. And I'm telling you.
Okay, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you.
Well, you're wrong.
That's the end of it. I'm not going.
I'm telling you, you're wrong.
So the pavement condition index, thank you for your opinion. I don't agree with it.
But I can prove it.
No, you can't.
Okay.
Okay, this is 2020.
We're moving on.
And this is 2015. And so the numbers between these two maps, I'll have it out here. You can look at your street and get a magnifying glass out, check the number out. They didn't really move a whole lot in 5 years, but they did move a little bit. But we're working off of this one, and we're going to get another revised map in the next fiscal year and update the whole thing. And I know it's an eye chart from your distance, but when you get up close, you can really differentiate in your neighborhood exactly what's going on. 64th is in yellow. Generally, they're in the high 70s to 80s. And so I don't expect that we're going to be doing 64th anytime in the next 3, 4, 5 years.
I think we paid 64 and about 3 years ago.
we did the first section.
The first one section.
Right, okay.
The second part.
So, yeah, we did repave one section, got 78, 69, and 79. So we're getting close, so maybe 3 years. But we're going to do a whole new assessment because it's been a couple of years and we got to get it up to date. But this is how we base what street gets paved next. And that leads us to the reclaimed water lines. And it all cascades from there.
We are allocating about $1 million a year for the next, including this year, 2 more in the next 2 years, $1 million each, until we get every road in the city to 75. That's our goal, is to get every road in the city to 75 within this 3-year window. And we're just order of magnitude, we're spending on golf wins. It's going to be about $4 million for that, and an equal amount on Boca Ciega. So it's a lot of money being put into those two projects, and that's over and above the regular road resurfacing program.
So,
Yeah, but
If the goal is 75, what is the average now? Robert, you have an idea?
roughly, I'm gonna say it's in the mid-60s.
So that would be pretty good.
Like I said, when I first got here, we were doing 30s and 40s. I actually inherited this from Alex, his predecessor, and my predecessor.
I've been living here 6-7 years now, so I apologize for assuming, but your definition of repaving, you say, are you saying the whole street, or? Because I see things repaved in chunks. I'm not aware of where streets have been paved, like the whole street, like the lots, because it's nuts. See, that's what I'm asking, what's the?
No, that's a great
difference
question.
between
Thank you for bringing it up. We'll go right back to 64. 64th actually consists of about eight or nine sections. And so in between each block, that block face gets a number. And so if your street is as long as 64th, and the very farthest piece back is rated in an 80 or 79, but the very first one that everybody drives on is a 64. Well, we'll pave that 64 from one point to another, but we won't go all the way down to the 85.
But you'll make sure all the laterals, everything's fixed before you.
If we take the asphalt off the street, we pay it, we're fixing the reclaim, we're replacing the reclaim pipe.
Because I think in the last couple of years, you did the first part of 64th. But we didn't, at that point, we weren't proactively doing the laterals. And recently 59th, the first part of 59th was done from the boulevard into that second street east.
Yeah.
So that was that chunk that was done. But to your point, not all the way down to the 700 block of road.
This year's paving effort is down in Paso Grill on Gulf.
Go for it.
Gulf
Go for it.
Way, Gulf Way. I always get tricked between Winds and Way. Gulf Way from First Avenue, and we're going to take the $1 million allocation that we have in the program, and we're going to run north as far as it's going to take us.
There's something on the north side of 75th Avenue from Line Pass Road back to.
Yeah, we did a few last year, a lot of east-west roads, right?
Yeah,
Those are complete.
Yeah, and so you'll also see, and sometimes we have the opportunity to take advantage of what we call adjacencies, where if we're taking on a main piece of road and it's at a 58, but there's a small one block section that's maybe a 64. Well, while we're there, we're going to capitalize on mobility of the contract and just bang that one out. So there is some variance up and down, but not a lot. But we do bundle and do adjacencies where it makes fiscal sense for all of our tax dollars.
But I have this question, sorry,
Sure.
and I get what you're saying, and I guess I somewhat agree with the strategy of 75 as a goal and everything, but it seems to me that everything's gonna be a patchwork at the end of the day versus having the whole city, St. Pete Beach, fully paid. I know there's a cost, I get that, but it just seems that it's gonna be ugly. So going 64, then I go on 55, then I go on 75, whatever, all these streets. It's just gonna be, I don't know, I'm
Yes,
seeing
yes,
patches all
but
the
it's,
time. Versus a goal of over whatever period of time, 10 years, 5, I don't know. Pay everything to make it aesthetic, make it beautiful.
Well,
make it appealing.
Well, our goal is right now is within 3 years, everything's going to be 75 is a very satisfactory road. But we can't really turn the entire city up in 2-3 years and repay the entire city. The life cycle of the pavement work that we're doing, depending on the usage, runs 20 to 30 years. So you got to think that we're trying to do is kind of amortize that over the life
I have a
cycle.
solution, I'm here for solutions today.
Okay.
Get the hotels to pay, there you go.
I'll get right on that.
Okay.
But I would like to, if I might, Alex, expand. So your comment about the differences in the asphalt condition is shades of gray after the UV rays hit it for a little while. But what you're going to see in the next maybe 3 years, 2 years from now, there's a whole nother subset of asphalt preservation techniques that we're going to be bringing into the city. And there, it's called fog sealing. We did a couple in Bella Vista. I don't know if you've probably seen it. And what it is, it's a emulsion that is sprayed onto the surface of the street to rejuvenate the petroleum oil lubricants that form the actual asphalt binding. And so as the street ages back down into the 70s, we can do it very cheap, like pennies on the dollar compared to regular paving. We can rejuvenate that street and bring it back up to a 95. And then 10 years later, when it's back down to a 75, do it again.
So with that strategy, which you buy time, you know, it's like doing micro facelifts, you know, in terms of the something like that.
So I expect that we're going to get to that point where we're paving, ripping up asphalt and paving less, but rejuvenating more. And ultimately, we may well be able to get over 75 as we approach this thing. If we're sitting here maybe 7 years from now having this conversation, yeah, I think that's where we're going to be.
But to Ed's point, if I may, is there a way, and we don't have to answer it now, of course, but from an aesthetic viewpoint, we have a lot of very long stretches, or for any road, doesn't matter the long, whether they're on the east side or the west side of the boulevard. To do a whole road, even if a section maybe is at 71, but the previous part is at 59, you do the 59, but not the other part. Why not do the whole thing from aesthetically to get it done?
I think that now, like Michael, I think was trying to get to is that now that we're getting towards the 75, it's a lot easier to standardize that. Because the deviation between the road segments is not going to be as radical as roads that have not been touched for 20-something years. Because you know, we're dealing with roads that, you know, God knows when the last time they were touched, you know, they would have been 20 years ago. So
Sorry, my last item on that, but when I talk about the hotels, it's not necessarily joking, because there's a lot of investments, as everyone's aware, that's going on, and they're gonna make themselves beautiful, and some of them need them, and that's all fine, for the most parts, right? But they're all gonna be, so to me, it becomes a facade. So if you've ever been to Shanghai, you see the beautiful buildings, but when you see inside the buildings, in the interior of them, it's slums. Okay, in China, if you ever been to Shanghai, that's how it is in there. And so you see from the outside, oh my God, the beautiful buildings, but then you've got these little alleyways where these buildings are, and it's slums. And, you know, I'm looking at this, we're investing in Cory Landing, you know, all these other properties that are investing tremendous amount, they're getting gorgeous. But where we live, And so to me, we want this as paradise. We've got to make it, we've got to, you know, so to me, you've got to think outside the box and think of other ways to finance it, to make it pretty. And I'm not saying overnight, clearly it's going to take time, but I think we got to look at a broader picture than just, you know, certain segments, whether the streets or, you know, the overall city.
right, and they do new projects do pay what's called a transportation impact fee. So they do
Raise
pay.
it for them.
Huh?
Raise it for them.
Well, and we raised them recently. We raised the sewer connection fees. We established parks impact fees. So we've been working on setting up a cost structure that's got to be under the law. It has to be justifiable. Can't just say a number arbitrarily. You know, you have to have a basis for cost. But in anticipation for Cory Landings, you know, we did, you know, look at all those numbers and came up with a new strategy. The transportation impact fee is set up by the county, it's not set up by us. We split the revenues half and half with the county, but it's set up by them. One more question on this issue, because we do need to move
So
forward.
on the paving, suggestion I made a couple of years ago, I think I saw that you guys were doing it. I've seen in other parts of the world, that now they're able to use lighter colored asphalt so that you don't get the heat problem. And I stepped out to take a look at those things, but are we doing anything in that lighter color paving?
We're
that
not
reduces
doing
heat?
anything on, the goal is first to get the roads in the right condition. The color adds a lot of expense to the to doing it.
It does.
So that so our goal is trying to get to 75 first, get the roads so you can ride on them and have a comfortable ride, and then we can begin
It was
addressing.
very expensive, you could when you're
Yeah.
doing it, it's too expensive at the time of.
Well, right now, we're still playing catch up. In 2-3 years, when we're not playing catch up anymore, then we can be getting.
But when
less
you're
money.
catching up and asphalting an old road, you're saying it's even then.
Even then,
you're doing it at the same
yeah,
time.
you don't really save a lot of money whether you do it at the moment that you're playing the road, because you gotta come back after the road has settled and paint it. It's kind of like, it's kind of like painting your
an
job.
asphalt treatment. I was referring to asphalt treatment. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually a paint job that you do.
I mean, I think we have this problem, and I'm sorry, I mean, we need to move on, but we have a problem across the city, particularly where we don't have sidewalks in certain residential areas. When we repave, I mean, I went out with a little heat gun, and it's 150, 160 in the, on the roadway, because.
So I know there was a value get into the asphalt.
Yeah.
Yeah, now the painting is really bad for dogs. Okay,
I wasn't referring to painting.
yeah, no, it's called the color treatments
It
are
makes it
really
white.
bad for small animals are in the or the children. If you're in the 2 to 3 foot range, the color, the heat now will not stay on the ground, it will reflect, because that's what the color, the lighter color does. And so you will get at that temperature, it will be higher than what it was before. So we gotta be conscious about all those things.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Rough
electrical underground.
rough order of magnitude, coloring the streets doubles the price.
Sorry?
Rough order of magnitude, coloring the street will double the price.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is.
Yes.
And yes, we have been watching that. The Department of Energy actually developed it out in the Midwest, and 130-degree asphalt street can be reduced down to about 85 degrees. But, we gotta pay for it. Electrical undergrounding on Gulf Boulevard, just cruising right along. The conduit for all the wire is complete from 55th up to 75th on the east side of Gulf Boulevard. They're now working on the west side from 75th down. It won't take them very much longer, another week or two. And then we'll begin to shift over to placing the pads and concrete for equipment that will show up. So all those round containers up on the poles or transformers, they all come down and turn into green boxes. And the individual service lines that go to your buildings actually come down and they turn into smaller green pedestals. And so you'll begin to see the contractor place the concrete pads and preparation for the wire to be pulled through the conduit up into that concrete pad. So the box then sits on top of it. And then Duke Energy's contractors come in and actually wire things up. And so there'll be two groups of contractors out there working together to make that happen.
And then at the end, then Duke will de-energize the existing wires, then will come in and remove all the poles. And that's appropriate. The project is going fairly well. We have a good contractor. We hire a new engineer, Nicole Grant. And Nicole comes from a lot of experience on the electrical field. And she's basically taking all the projects that have to do with Duke Energy. So, and that's moving very well.
Yes, she has our electrical portfolio, which actually brings me to another project, the electrical undergrounding in various neighborhoods. A little bit more complicated. The state has a program that they asked directed Duke Energy to take a look at your grid, the whole thing across the state, find the places that go out the most frequently and fix those. And they created a whole new tariff in order to do that. There's a whole big financing push to make that happen. Some of that is here on St. Pete Beach. And it'll look very hodgepodge, a line from here to here, and then we're gonna go over here and fix that line from there to there. Well, that's because that's where the lines are breaking. And so it's all data driven and it's all being managed by Duke Energy. We are trying to work with them to get them to drop the lines underground wherever we can, but it's not always feasible. And so that's one thing that Nicole and I are working very hard on with Duke, is to figure out where can we get that and transition to underground instead of overhead, but it's not.
So what parts are going underground in the neighborhoods? What ones aren't?
We have 19 what Duke Energy calls work orders, and like I said, each work order is like from this block face to that block face, and over here to over there. Generally, they're in this vicinity of the city. The northern part of District 2 and the southern part of District 1. And it's everywhere that you see a guy with a drill rig, that's Duke Energy. And so to nail it down and answer the question specifically is almost an impossibility for maybe that they're really long.
Now, there are a couple of areas where we had told them to pause and to give us the cost of upgrading from hardening to undergrounding, especially in is it third and fourth? No, yeah, first and second, sorry. Yeah, third and fourth already on the ground, first and second are not.
Three pumps point.
Three pumps, point
Yeah.
one.
So that doesn't make sense to have a neighborhood that's half on the ground, half not. So they're supposed to be coming back to us with a number. If it's reasonable and doable, the commissions had said that bring the number back and we'll try to fund that. We set aside $375,000 a year to help augment the undergrounding program. We don't have a number yet, so I can't tell you whether we're going to be able to do it, but the commission intent is to try to now they come back with $3 million, and that's going to be a different discussion. But
Isn't part of the complicating factor that the city is, and particularly District 2, we're split onto two different feeds from Duke. So from 64th north comes in on what I believe is called the Pasadena feed.
Correct.
And then from 64th south, so where Bahia Shores and Brightwater on the east side come in through the south side. And then I'm not sure where that
Well, we have
west side.
two primary circuits. One's called Circuit 19, one's called Circuit 13. 19 is the one that you described that comes from Pasadena. 13 is sort of a partner circuit. It also comes in from Pasadena, but goes to the south. And so between those two circuits, Duke has identified about 19 locations that are one block to the other that are frequent outages, and that's what they're going after.
Okay.
And so we're doing the best that we can with the limited resources we have to try to get as much as we can underground. Okay.
When you're underground, are you then removing the poles or the poles stay there?
The only thing that stays is the actual street light pole, and the street light power is fed from underground.
So there will be phone lines and whatever else.
yeah, and that's a complicated part because
Great observation.
there is a very complicated structure / relationship between Duke Energy, who put the poles up there, and all of the people that are using the poles, and they have lease agreements for the poles and all that. So when Duke is coming in and saying we are moving out, they send a letter to anybody who's on the pole and say, we're planning on doing this, so you need to make your own plans, right? And sometimes they will cooperate, and when the trenching is being done, they put the cable and the conduit, underground with the energy. Sometimes they say, no, it doesn't make sense for us. We want to keep that pole, and then they have the right to buy that pole and retain the pole structure. That sometimes happens, but I think they're really trying to work with Duke and bringing stuff down.
Right, because, and that's a very good point. I mean, Duke owns the poles, the city leases the poles.
We leased, the equipment.
The equipment, right, they own the poles, so as Alan said, they rent the spectrum to Frontier, to whoever. And then the way it was explained to me, which, okay, it's a strange way to run business, but they give their rentees 6 months to get off the pole. So the question is, and particularly across our district, we had a mix because Frontier just came in and some areas went underground, some stayed overground. What happens to Frontier? And Frontier was very blunt. They said it's much quicker to go on the poles for us and cheaper, so that's why we went on the poles. So why did you do everything underground? And I get it, it's a business equation. But now what will happen to those lines, and will we achieve our objective of getting rid of the poles and making this increasing aesthetics? Or will we only get the Duke lines on the ground, but now we have to stick with the other Frontier, Spectrum, or whoever else is on the poles? And
Duke's not gonna wanna maintain those poles if they don't have any equipment on it.
They walk away.
Right, but then the pole stays because other Spectrum's gonna want to be on the pole. And what we've talked about in working proactively, not to get into a state where we have on 67 from in other areas of the city and up in Treasure Island, they're called the half poles.
Yep.
Where Duke will come in and say, we're off the pole. They cut off half the pole. So if you want to stay on the pole, here's a half pole. And the aesthetics are even worse.
Now, on Gulf Boulevard, basically, we just bite the bullet and said to all of the other people on the polls, tell us what the number is, because we want you out, and how much is it gonna cost you to be out? So we are spending a couple $100,000 on that. It's a $14 million project, so it's not that big in relationship to the overall project. But we basically paid everybody just, get off the pole. So that way, Boulevard can just be, without any wires and stuff.
So I don't want to set any false expectations. This is an extremely tedious and arduous process with communications providers because they don't have any reason to invest. They're busy making money off of our services. And so to get them to do this is very, very hard. And so I think it's going to be a very, very long battle. Duke is going to chop the poles, we need communications guys there, and Nicole and I are going to have to hammer it out in the next 10 years.
Because we went through this just so everyone understands, the communication providers are the legislation from the state, so we have no say. So the 5G towers, for example, that went around town, we had no say as a city. Frustrated as heck, and we tried to work with them, of course, and do the best that we could. But at the end of the day, it's not ours.
They have a lot of power in Tallahassee. So
By the way, it's all on the ground themselves, and they self-finance it, so we learn from that. We just want to see what they did, talk to them. They had the same issue with the Spectrums and others, so they,
That was their special assessment.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's
So
what you're talking about.
they had to get a certain number of the residents to agree to it. And it was not cheap. I think it was about 20,000. I think it was.
Per home, per home.
Yeah, you have to probably sign.
But I'm also talking about like the Spectrums and things like that, how they got.
Okay.
That's what they did.
Yeah.
Okay. The engineer did all, but yeah, the engineer. I think it's about right now, probably 25,000. So the question is, or whatever percent, 16% of your neighbors are going to agree to take $20,000. I talked to a few neighbors, loving the idea of letting them number. But
I think there was one other question.
the 690 neighborhood streetlight replacement program. In District 1, from 75th Avenue up to 93rd, from Old Gulf Boulevard over to Flying Pass Road, that whole quadrant, all of those streetlights are now have been replaced. They are LED, amber, 50-watt, thermal-friendly lights. That's the standard for the rest of the city, and we're going to be going into discussions with Duke Energy about how to convert the rest of the city here in the next couple of months, and through the entire city. That comes at no cost to us because it was changing out the light fixture and all that going to reflected in our lease value. That's going to make sense to pay every day.
Now, I guess you just want to clarify one thing. What was happening is that you was changed, every light fixture that failed was being replaced by a new light fixture. So you were basically having this checkerboard, in the neighborhoods where one was an all light sodium vapor, one was an LED, and going back and forth, having the light fixtures having no shields, not having the standardized color. So we discussed this with you. We had different light colors. We put them 73rd we had them there for a couple of months. And then we did a survey, identified the one color spectrum that we wanted to have. And that neighborhood that Mike described is the first one that gets done. I will encourage you guys to go on private so you can see what it looks like. But basically, once we and I'm gonna get the commission to go on and drive them. Once they're all clear and satisfied that, okay, this is good, this works. Talk to the neighbors and everything else, then there will be a rollout plan for the entire city. And that will be the color spectrum for all the plants. Sorry, go ahead.
Just a quick one, this summer, a bunch of turtles ended up in Tradewinds Pool because they did not have turtle, I'm gonna call them turtle lights. Our condominium did our exterior lights to change, we changed everything to turtle lights. So my question is, the city policy for the street lights are those, is there any type of policy for the trade of the hotels and condos along the beach to eventually have turtle lights on their exterior lights? Or was what we did just a voluntary thing? I was under the impression we were told to do that.
Michelle, could you help with that?
They have to comply during turtle season, so it's not mandatory that they change their light, but they have to shield it or change the direction. But they can't have any light that disorients the turtles facing it out of the code enforcement matter.
Right, and Turtle Trackers does a
They
survey,
meet,
and then the identified
We're
lights.
those every year, May first is the start of turtle season, and they go with,
So what happened this summer with trade?
we've been working with them, trying to get them to comply, and it's a process.
So we're not
Okay.
fine.
Being successful, I mean, why does the resort, I understand have a lot of money invested here and everything, have to deal around with these things when the rest of us have to pay the price and have it done? To me, that's just something that, working with them, just tell them, that's my thinking.
Well, I think their lighting does comply. The challenge comes in with both hotels and condominiums where people leave their blinds open. And so that's supposed to try, I live in a condo, I know that's an issue. It's just trying to get people in condos and hotels to close their curtains, blinds, or whatever it is, because that's probably the issue. It's, I'm guessing with triggers. So I know we have that issue right now.
Thank you, Commissioner. We are an hour, we got a lot of.
When did you start using the new lights? If someone calls in for repair, if they're using the new lights now?
Yes. So Alex, if you don't mind, I would like to do something specifically for Commissioner Grill.
Is that a hack or money? Yes,
So Bay Street, Commissioner Grill,
Bay Street,
and it's ponding and flooding issues,
yes.
along with the front door to City Hall. If you've ever been here during a rainstorm, you gotta
Okay.
wear your galoshes.
I'll help you with the demo.
If you'd be so kind as to assist.
Yeah, I'll do the minor one.
This is called FlexiPave. Asphalt is very, very dense, but if you take out the fines, it opens up pores and allows rainwater to flow straight through.
So for those while he's demonstrating, Bay Street, city repaved Bay Street over the summer, but the storm drains are in the middle of the street. So the pitch of the street is to the middle and it's not pitched 100%. So people's sprinklers will flood the street or when it rains, not everything flows perfectly. So.
So what we're going to do is try to get after all these bird bath issues that everybody has. It's just such a pain by installing this where it makes sense. So it's not a catch-all. It's not solve everything. But we're advancing in our technology. We're challenged. We pay attention. We're trying. We're learning. And I'm very excited, but I'm an engineer and a geek, so what can I tell you?
So we're gonna be coming to the commission with small contract to test that in two different locations. One is in Bay Street. The other one is something that been piloting for 4 years, which is the area right in front of City Hall. That every time that it rains, we gotta test our ability to jump to the portal. So we're going to try to do those two areas as the first ones, see how well they work. And there's this could be the solution for a lot of these small ponding issues. This is not my entire neighborhood flooding issue. It's just, when we have those imperfections in the road system that we need just a place to patch it. Yeah, more, Mike.
Thank you.
I'll be out here if anybody has any.
Jennifer.
All right. Citywide development update.
Hello.
Thank you.
Just an update on some of the development happening in the city. Things that have gone approved through the commission, we've had in the last year, the Don Cesar Ballroom, actually about a year this month. They're adding a 10,000 square foot ballroom to the north of the hotel. The east end of Corey, the Corey Landings, was approved. They're still going through building permits and the brownfield cleanup, working with DEP. So it's a long process.
So
And
we
then,
expect that permit probably to be issued summertime, last time? Right, spring, summer.
it all depends with DEP
Right,
too.
right.
And then the Miramar was approved a few years ago. And they are back on track. They were working on some funding for that project. So those are projects that have been approved and they're in the works.
So
but
Jennifer, Miramar's permits didn't expire?
No,
No, because of the state of emergency with COVID.
yeah, there is under state law, every time that there's a declaration of emergency by the governor. And every development order, which means a permit, a conditional use, everything, gets 6 months more. So every time that the governor issued a new declaration for COVID, and there were several of those, and people get more time. When we have the
Hurricanes.
storms, they get another 6 months, so. Yeah,
Residential too.
every development order.
All building permits.
Or building permits, any approval for development that has been issued by the city, it's automatically, they call it tolling. No, it's toll.
Things that have come into us, but we don't have an application, we don't have any submittals. Because we sometimes see these and then they go away and don't happen, but we have met with a group that is looking at leasing the Winn-Dixie. It's a cigar company from Ybor. They have one in St. Pete, Paradise Cigar, I think it's called. They want to open up a cigar
Supermarket, right, supermarket.
market, because they're just selling things that are related to cigars. And they will also manufacture in that location. So they're looking at a 15-year lease. Again, I don't know that they signed a lease. They came in literally with a sketch, handwritten sketch, so not necessarily plans, but just so you know that we had that conversation with them. I think we would like to see anything there, but what is there now? They do plan the Winn-Dixie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, if that happens to go forward, then it's a good opportunity that we can negotiate with them a lease or sublease of the front end of that parking lot. Because a lot of the businesses that we have all along blind paths are short on parking. So if we can negotiate and get 20, 30, 40 spaces, it will really help those businesses to not have to worry so much about parking. So we're looking at doing that.
They plan on making some good amount of aesthetic changes to the building and maybe making a second floor like a Menzie area where they would have their office space and possibly a 2,500 square foot event space. So again, it was a hand-drawn thing that came, but they were very nice people. The trade winds, you probably know that they had their community meeting. We haven't had any submittals from them since that community meeting. That one stalled a little bit, but we haven't done anything since the community meeting on that one. One that has sold and we've talked to, but they, I think, are planning on having a community meeting in upcoming months is Serrata, as they are looking to do some upgrades to that site. And we have, and it's been a while, so I don't know what's really going on. Postcard Inn sold as well, and they were looking at making some upgrades in addition to that. Winn-Dixie, if that did go through because of the changes and the addition to the second floor square foot, it would have to be a community meeting, just like the trade winds and the Serrata as well. So if that does, so just keep an eye on those, but those are things that have been in discussions, but have yet to have submittals or kind of sign on the dotted line, so to speak. Any questions?
Just for clarification, we know that the lot up here that got clear is in the market for sale. And it's at least $3 million that they're asking for, but we have not seen any plans from anybody as to, I think they just have like an empty canvas and, whoever buys it then will come up with whatever they wanted to do out there.
Yeah, so we get a lot of questions because they were tearing down and then they put the sod in, what's going in. Right now, nothing. So there's, I think whoever bought it to flip it.
Yeah.
So they bought it
Demo flip price.
a year and a half ago.
Somebody told me, Smart was doing 500 rooms, is that correct?
I haven't seen, we've initially talked to them, they looked at doing like a JW Marriott. And then keep the main building when you pull in and then upgrade the other side.
2 more buildings.
And they're taking down what's there and putting in new ones.
Yeah, so I think it's one small building on the south side. The North Tower is, I believe, a replacement. That's what they talked to us about.
The north and south tower are replacements. The
replacement.
only one staying is that main building when you first pull in.
And they're planning a community meeting at some
They
point.
have to,
Yeah, at the end of March.
I think, yeah.
There's- got it.
So any questions on any other things that may be said out there?
Jen, what's the timeline on the environmental remediation for the landings for Belleville plants?
They just got extended another 90 days because the EP had some questions of making sure things were getting done properly. So the 90-day was
About
3
30
weeks ago, yeah. So then they'll have to resubmit and then,
So they are not yet permitted to clean it up?
they got the designation and now they're going through the process to getting it cleaned up and they have to work, they're working directly with the EP on that.
Yeah, we don't regulate and inspect that. That's going to the state. We don't have the expertise anymore.
No.
Yeah, we rely on.
I'm
the
just
state.
asking, where is the developer with the state? in
Yeah,
The process.
In the permitting process.
It's in the process.
And Jennifer, do we know, someone asked me, there's a lot of equipment and materials stored now at the east end?
That's our
ours.
project.
Ours. That's for the undergrounding of Boulevard. That's what we're using that for storage area.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
The west end of Quarry along Sunset Way, you talked about sending that out for design.
Yeah,
That's a sidewalk, we zigzag around pedestrians all the time.
Yes, that's the city project.
Yeah.
That we are finalizing the design, and there are two to three different projects that are going on over there. We are redoing the intersection of Quarry and Sunset. So that intersection is going to get raised, look nicer, and all of the different corners areas are going to be, we put in sidewalk and improving the landscaping of that. That's one project. There is a project that Public Works is doing in the park that is changing the force main in the park. When they finish that project, and we're going to redo the park. And then from then south is the third project, which is I think the one you were talking about. We're on the west side of the street. We're going to be doing a sidewalk that connects from Quarry all the way to Uptown Beach.
So the timetable for that, or?
Yeah, we have 380,000 this year, right? For that, so we're putting it out for bid and see how far we're going to start on Quarry, going south, and we'll see how far that money can take us.
and the other portion.
But yeah,
where
this
they're now
it's
designing.
the first part, the phase will be within this year.
So a general question is that with all this development, there's good, maybe some bad with it, and people have their own opinion, which is fine. But my question is, we've heard a lot about people being worried we're going to become the Clearwater, another Miami Beach. That I think everyone would acknowledge those discussions or talks that have been happening. Question to the city is, at what point does the city say, this is enough development that we're getting there and we need to stop? Like, when will we know? How will we know that? Are we becoming, we're too close to them? Or what are those triggers? What are those?
Right.
How do we know?
Two things. Any comparison to Miami Beach or Clearwater is a great exaggeration.
I'm sorry.
No.
Those comments have also come from the city mayor, so.
But
So, I'm just.
he's not here, so I will clarify. I don't know what he said. I don't know what he said, but
Anyways,
yeah, the maximum height in Sandy Beach is 115, 118 feet, which basically gives you 10 or 11 stories. Clearwater has buildings in the 22, 25, 30 range. Miami Beach has buildings that are 50 stories high. So we're going to be in the 10, 11
I think
stories.
the analogy is the crowdedness. It's not.
I know. Okay, so. And that's going to be in a very narrow corridor, which is the large hotel district. Okay, everything else is. The city has what's called a comprehensive development master plan. Okay, and that got adopted in 2015 after much debate and discussion. That sets up the maximum development guidelines for the city. Every city in the state is required to have a comprehensive plan like that, and it sets out the maximum that can be developed for that. That plan can be changed, and it can be changed at the initiative of the city commission. It takes time to change the plan, but if at some point the commission decides that, well, whatever they did in 2015 was too much, okay, because you begin to see the development that was too much, then that plan can be changed and readjusted. In the meanwhile, when we plan infrastructure needs, we plan to meet those requirements in that plan. We're required by the state to say, well, if this is what your comp plan says and you allow to, then we build to that. So we basically putting in the new sewer system. Our engineers calculate, well, if all of that gets developed, how much sewer, do we going to have to process, and how do you do that? And then they kind of work through the numbers and figure out the size of the pipes and all of that, right? But there is, of course, there's a limit, and
What is the limit?
what
is the limit?
the limit is what the comp plan right has today.
So there's no limit. So
No,
every property conforms to the comprehensive plan, which is that all of them come in, everyone gets to redevelop some parts that conform to the comprehensive plan, so we're not going to hold them to all the parts of the comprehensive plan, right? So if someone wants to redevelop and they want to put in their thing, we're gonna say, okay, you allow this much per acreage in density, you allow this much height, so go ahead, but forget about the fact that you have to put in the jackets, we're not gonna hold them.
No.
So, question I was asking is, when do we say enough is enough?
What
Just like the streets, with that 60%, 70%. I don't need a road study to tell me the road is full, even though the road study tells me that 60%. Whereas everybody that drives them down the floor, it's a 100%. So how many more do we let?
there is a process, and while there are two levels of development that are envisioned in the comprehensive plan. There is development of as of right, which they don't have to come to the city, they don't have to do anything else, they can develop up to that level. If they want to develop beyond that, they need to come to the city commission and get what's called a conditional use approval. Every project gets evaluated and approved or rejected on its own merits. Okay, so there is always the decision that gets made on each individual project. If the commission feels that this project is not adding value to the city and it's too much, it's got the ability to reject those projects. Okay.
Even if it meets the comprehensive plan, they reject it?
Yes. Now, there are specific reasons to reject. Okay, and those are outlined in the comp plan. They're outlined in the code. It says, if you have these issues, okay, you can reject.
Port Landings, the city, Port Landings, the developer failed to provide a survey, which the city is aware of, which is per our code, they're supposed to. And on Port Landings, they were supposed to provide a certificate of concurrency with the city was supposed to sign off on. That didn't happen either.
That's,
And there's
that's,
still other conditional use.
that's not true, okay? That's not
Oh,
true.
it's not. I have an attorney's letter that,
Yeah,
has been
The-
working with the
the-
city on this. And
the
you're
city-
aware of it,
the
and
city-
so is Warford Flows.
The city commission, when they approved the development, said that prior to getting any building permit, you have to develop the certificate of concurrence. So right now, they don't have a permit, and they have not been issued a certificate of concurrency yet. But they cannot move forward until they complete that. So it is one of the conditions of approval,
And so is the survey, and you still didn't get the survey.
but they have a survey now. So before
It
they
wasn't
ask,
submitted to any public hearing.
uh,
So there is a process, but it seems like that process doesn't work.
well, the process does work because they are going to have to get a concurrence certificate. They are going to have to get a survey. Okay,
But
so,
that was supposed to be before conditional use permit was granted.
no, that's not true,
That's what the code says.
because
The code says that
Because
that's
the-
how it's supposed to be.
the conditional use permit has conditions on it. Okay, and until the conditions are met, it can't go forward. Okay, so tomato, I mean, you can say that the conditional use permit has not been completed because until those conditions are met, nobody can go forward. Okay, and they have not met them.
But
And-
the city signed off on a conditional use permit.
Subject,
Regardless, even though they haven't met the
so-
conditions.
No,
Is that
they
what
have,
you're saying?
no, they have not met the conditions, so they don't have the ability to go forward yet,
But they were issued a conditional use permit.
subject to conditions.
Oh, that's absolutely ridiculous saying that.
No, it's not.
Okay, it says that-
It is, read the conditional use approval, it says you have to do all the steps
Before you get the conditional use permit.
before you move forward to get a permit.
Permit or condition.
A building permit,
Correct,
a building permit, is that
yes,
what we said?
yes.
Sorry, Ed, did you have a question?
No, you answered.
Okay.
Okay, so Jennifer, when would you be chatting?
I know, but just on that, I'm not close to the court or anything at all, I just, because you said they're all approved. So I used to court land, I'm not sure.
She meant,
The conditional use was approved by the commission.
Okay, but I think that's what I'm hearing.
Correct.
It's approved by the commission, meaning they could go.
They list
No,
a list
no.
of conditions that need to be met before they get started.
Oh,
correct, yeah, yes,
Got it.
yes.
Okay. So if they can meet these conditions, then they'll be.
correct.
Got it. They don't. Got it. Okay.
Alex, can-
Got it.
There's been discussion with some people in the room, and I know we're running late, but I think it's important. Can you talk quickly the difference between a variance and a conditional use permit, and when a developer, and we can use a hypothetical, one, when they would need a variance or when they would need a CUP? Because some developers are saying, well, I meet all the code, but they still need a CUP. And people are saying, well, wait a minute, how can you say you don't need approval if you need a CUP, conditional use permit?
And a variance is a deviation from the code, okay? It means that you want to do something different than what the code has prescribed. And there is legally no real entitlement to a variance. So you present your case and you basically have to explain why under the conditions of the property that you own, you want to be something different than what the code prescribes. You go to a hearing and the burden of proof is on the applicant. Okay, he wants to do something different than what it's in the code.
And who's the approving authority? for
That's
that?
the Board of Appeals,
Adjustment.
Board of Adjustments. I'm sorry.
Board of
We're here
Adjustments,
today for
Board of Adjustments.
3 hours.
which is a city
This
board
is a city board
comprised
appointed by
of residents.
residents who the commission has appointed. You know, each commissioner and the mayor get to appoint one person.
Mr. Bomar is on the board.
Right. Then you have a conditional use approval where you still have to come to a hearing in front of the commission. But there are specific criteria, and I'll be happy to send those out to anybody who's interested, that says the commission will evaluate your project based on this criteria. And you have to meet that criteria in order to get approved. So the burden of proof is not 100% on your side, it's 50-50, because the commission can reject the project if they, after testimony and what's called competent substantial evidence, it determines that this project doesn't meet one of those criteria, and you can send it back to the drawing board, and the applicant can reapprove or not. But that is a hearing in front of the city commission, and when you look at the report that gets done on the conditional use permit, there will be an evaluation of all of these conditions and how the project can move forward or not. In addition to that, and one of the residents alluded to what's called a concurrency analysis. Concurrency analysis means that, and it's something that we have in the rules, that we gotta make sure that the infrastructure meets has the capacity to address the development that's coming in front of you. Okay, and that concurrency analysis is done by engineers. There's a group of engineers that they hire that prepares the report for concurrency analysis. There's a group of engineers that we hire separately that reviews that concurrency analysis. In some cases, that concurrency analysis will be sent to the state, because it may impact state roads, we'll get their opinion and everything else. And we did that here with the scoring development. We sent it to the state, and they have some comments and some things that we incorporated into the analysis. So all that is part of that process. It's a long answer, but it's a complicated issue. So.
Thank you. No, I think it's important because there's a lot of activity going on, and a lot of people just using different words and well, I meet all of it. I don't have to get any approvals. I don't need a variance. I meet everything. Well,
so some, they're careful with the wording, because sometimes they would say, we're not applying for any variances. That's true.
But you still need a CUP. You still need to come in and get approval for what you want to do. A different type of approval, maybe not as severe. For example.
So maybe it's a segue question, or it's related. So there's something in our statutes, in our ordinances, that says if you do development over a certain size, you need to provide a beach access.
Correct.
Would that be a variance or additional use if they were done?
And that is part of the conditional use approval. So every project that is on the waterfront that comes for approval and they don't have a beach access, they will have to provide one or two or three, and
one per lot. Is that the way I read it?
The challenge, and one of the things that we've been talking to Tradewind is well, they're converting everything into one lot, right? Legally they have the right to do that, but it's one mega lot, right? So our position is like, well, I don't think that was the intent. You need to provide more than one. One doesn't cut it, but
I mean, right now it's not well lines. There's different ownership.
Yes, exactly.
So Don, that's actually a good segue into item number 8, beach access. Thank you.
Well, what it started as we were evaluating some of our beach access streets, like right there by the county beach, just to the south. There at 47th, we have one at 51st, one across from the Bella Vista entrance there. We've got 5 of those, and we went to evaluate. Just there's kind of fences falling in, doesn't look appealing. The entrance, there's old brick and pavers that are falling apart. So just kind of in a disarray. So it kind of started where we were evaluating those and how can we make them consistent, like whatever the surfacing is leading up to the beach, let's make that consistent. Let's put the same type of fencing. Let's make it look so when you drive by. We went to go find them and we passed a few. That's how
hidden they are. The hidden gems,
So we want to improve that. In the process of doing that, we are in the process of evaluating the conditions of all of these beach access points, and then rating those similar to the streets and start to do improvements. We have committed some funding for the 5 that go along that I was just speaking about, but we in the process have identified all the beach access points all the way up from Upham, all the way down to First. And so, not necessarily the walkovers, although we'll look at the conditions of that, because those will eventually have to change with the Army Corps comes back with us, but we do feel that there could be an improvement there, so that is an upcoming project, so I just wanted to let you guys know about that.
I have a question about beach access. How many have we lost through the years? Because in the 80s, I used to come over and hang out at the Swig Lawn on Sunday. And I'm pretty sure there was beach access there, north of Postcard Inn, that we used to use. And we sat out on the beach and then we'd go, drink.
I would say Silver Sands.
So are we selling off
Silver
access
Sands
through the
was
years?
built in
not that we know, I mean.
Because we don't have any beach access near us, near Postcard Inn or anything. We have to go all the way to Upham to get access now.
I will say, when we did meet with Postcard Inn, when they wanted to do anything real specific, because our vision, as we were just talking about the sidewalk, it'll be difficult. If we do a beach walk, I think we talked about in the last meeting last year of building that. Well, I don't think, it might be hard to get it in front of Silver Sands. We could do it from Upham, but we are envisioning, if we have this beach walk, walking down Sunset Way and having an access right there to the north.
Through
of their
the north side of
property.
PCI. Now,
So
if
we
that
can-
existed before, I mean, it'd be interesting to research. I didn't know that.
Well, this is the, I call the alleyway, the parking
Right.
between, just north of PCI and south of Silver Sands Wall. And then there are, the interesting thing is there are Duke's poles around there with public streetlights. So they may be holdovers of, I don't know if Duke
Where
in the
they have
past.
a concrete wall and their parallel parking there, that was beach access. The sheriff's department goes in there, but now they're blocking us from walking.
We'll do some title search, because I doubt that the city would have ever sold that. I mean, I don't know, how could you even sell it in terms of having,
Or gated
because
for some reason.
normally those are easements that you granted. And, I don't know, the city will be able to sell those easements, but we'll do a title search on that
Yeah,
one.
because we have no beach access.
Yeah, we're trying to get it there. I don't know what was there before, but in this process, when we were walking the beach access, like, is this our property?
This was in the
We
80s.
replaced this fence, is it on Bon Air's property or is it ours, so we have to do that before we get this started, but we had talked about that, and we also, because a lot of those beach access are in the middle, which is great, but nothing over on the north end.
We seem to be okay for our district. 55th, I think there's access. 59th, we have access, but from 59th north,
Unless you're trespassing.
Right.
Yeah, and so.
customary use, but yes. No, please. No, please. And anyway, that's why I put it on the agenda, because there's obviously a strong desire, we all live here for the beach. And as the development goes, and I know the city's having discussions with them and nothing's finalized, there's a bit of nervousness, uneasy feeling. We're gonna lose access to the beach. Those in the district who of course live on the west side don't have this issue, of course, because they're on the west side.
When we can
of the
ask
boulevard.
for, obviously if they develop, they
John.
have to, it's part of the comp plan, as you mentioned.
So what I see is I went to Google Earth or Google Maps, and it actually shows streets in a different color. And so it shows that behind Slice from 64th Avenue, over to the alley north of PCI, and then down the alley of PCI is the beach access. And I used to go that way myself also. And then there's another street on the Google Maps that runs over by Rumfish, between Rumfish and Alden, another street there. And then at 58th Avenue, not only is there a continuation, but when you go to the end of 58th Avenue, you can still see the old signs. There's old signs that still say no bikes and other things. That's giving you the idea of how old the sign is. So these were old accesses. So I think the key word maybe is easement, because I didn't do a title search, but I went and I looked at the tax, I looked at the property lines, and the property lines do include those areas. So the tax map shows that these properties touch each other. but that doesn't take away,
That, you know,
Easements,
if you do a survey, you might show easements there.
but so.
And that's part of the evaluation of beach access that we're doing right now.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm interested to see where
Yeah.
the beach access is, like, I guess at the next stewardship meeting, in a couple of weeks, actually get on the agenda, but we're gonna. So they have beach access and beach rights, so maybe something will come out in that discussion.
We can give you some preliminary stuff at
Yeah.
that meeting, but we're just starting to do the kind of but like, it takes a while to get title and easement info, but it's on our horizon for sure.
Right, so when I look at this, everybody who lives in Three Palms or 59th Avenue, you know, once they get south to 58th, we only have Gulf Boulevard to get to any beach access, which the first beach access is 52nd. So it's a long trip to then get to a narrow thing that two wheelchairs can't even cross each other on that thing. So,
There's also a couple of those access, you get to the beach and you're in the middle of the dunes, like where
which
you're
you
not
can't,
supposed to be.
which is 58th Avenue.
And we're like, well, this makes no sense. So there'll be some coordination with DEP to make a path. So we're not cutting into the dunes, but there are a couple access points that are a little wonky.
So right, I agree. So my question or comment is with this, like, since the people have to go either north all the way to Upham or south all the way on Gulf Boulevard, which is a little risky. If we could, at least, I saw that the north end of all of the Tradewind properties, so the old and the Rumfish, but the north end, there's an alley there, which is the back of the hotel. So if somehow you can convince them to make that alley a beach access for residents or for some group, it's pretty well conditioned to get to a point where then the building gets in the way. But as far down, they can put a bike rack there, let people lock up, and then walk there. So that people don't have to go all the way to the new Tradewinds things, all the way to South End, which is hard to get to.
Yeah, that was brought up in the community meeting.
Yeah.
At the Tradewinds community.
I wasn't there. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. But
so good point.
to get something that worth it, okay.
And just so
Well, I mean,
everyone,
I'm sorry.
just so everybody knows, John Kurzman is my appointee to the Beach Stewardship Committee, so he's watching out for District 2. So just-
Thank you.
Back in the day, every single neighborhood had beach access, and some of the hotels have encroached upon that. They may not have sold it, but they've encroached it. And I live in Pocatello Isle, and all the time, us and, well, mostly the Leo people had to make sure that the hotel, all of a sudden, they have a tiki hut. All of a sudden, we had to call the city code enforcement, and it was a constant battle. Finally, they've gotten word, but you had it, every neighborhood's had it.
Where was it?
That's the big question, and the hotels have been encroaching, and if you're not vigilant, it's not your job to be vigilant, but if you're not vigilant, you've lost it to the hotel.
Any documentation that you have, send it over to us, because, I mean,
Some of them.
I don't
are
know
less than
when that happened, and maybe happened 20 years ago, 10 years
No, we're
ago.
talking 40, 50 years ago.
Well, I mean,
And it was deeded to everybody's house. If somebody has some really old deed, if you can find it on there,
Well, we just went through that with the Dunstable.
Had fires, and everything was lost.
I have the deed for the access, just so.
Sure.
But for Brightwater, that's in Brightwater's name, but I have for it.
good.
We've
That's
got-
very helpful.
You can- you can-
Okay, so let's, so anyway, so more work to do and, you know, as the city staff sees, there's a high level of interest, of course. In this.
Maybe I misread the term, and I don't want to turn this into a beach meeting. But it says beach access, so I was considering once you get to. Where our thoughts are, what your thoughts are, what we're allowed to do once we get.
Why don't we move that discussion to your beach meeting? It's
Well,
say
I'd like to
7
know,
o'clock.
where am I allowed to sit? I've heard all kinds of stories that, you know, you get run off and hotels tell you you can't sit there, you gotta go sit in the water. That's a good question.
And speaking of,
It's
speaking
different all
of
the way
the
up
water,
in the
you know, I understand hotels have the right to the high water line, but what about in the water? For instance, Tradewinds has big slides, whatnot, on the sand, but also in the water. They have all kinds of toys that I think you have to pay to.
We don't
use
permit
it.
the FWC or the Wildlife Commission permits anything in the waterways.
They, can you say that again?
It's permitted by the state, the waterways,
To have,
whatever they have in that water, yeah.
okay,
But I,
If you want to answer something on the water, yeah, you go
Okay.
through them. They are, anything that's wet sand is considered state sovereign land, okay? Which means that the public can use it, but they're not really owned by us, the city, is owned by the state. That which they
so
allow.
the state controls.
It's a control what happens on the wet sand. What happens on the dry sand is a hodgepodge of things, depending on whether if there was a dune system created and state. It's called something called the erosion control line. So it's a new line that gets set, and from then to the water is publicly owned land, and it becomes state sovereign land as well. So in some areas, you will see that, for example, silver sands. Silver sands, you know, you have an area by where the dune begins, there to the water is public land. Okay, but each property, unfortunately, in here is different. So some properties own to the dune, some property owns a little bit more than that, and some properties own all the way to the high water mark. We are right now are about 90% completed about getting surveys for each Gulf Beach property in the city. And once we complete that, we're going to be doing training with all of the sheriff's officers that patrol the beach, so they can resolve disputes as to whether you are sitting on private property, and they can tell you to move because it's private property, or you are sitting on public property and can say, no, it's public property. And no.
But the problem right now, like the county appraiser does not,
It's
doesn't take that into
Correct.
account. So, for example, our sheriff's office wrote a ticket to somebody that was behind Silver Sand, saying that they were allowed to be there. They wrote them a ticket saying, you know, you're on private property. Well, in essence, they were on public land. So that ticket got voided. So even for the sheriff's officers right now, going to the county appraiser, it's not, you know, correct.
They don't know.
Right,
But
so
that's
that's why the
the-
surveys come in.
Why would we allow them to do that to our citizens?
And there's no.
We're citizens in that
The-
contract.
I know. I'm just talking-
And the officer made a mistake, and we got corrected.
But there's a different thing here, and if you go back to the October 2019 meeting, it was in these chambers, city commission. Look at the videos online, when we had a usual and customary ordinance, which is a concept. It's not that you need an ordinance, the usual and customary standard has been that if your beach was usually and customary open to the public, it remains so.